In 2000, I was looking for a new job. I'd relocated from Adelaide to Sydney a couple of years before that. I'd moved for family reasons. I have two sons, and their dad had recently moved to Sydney, and it just made sense for all of us to be living in the same city. But it was a pretty, big decision to make to move cities. I was leaving a lot behind. It was a tough decision. I had to sell my house. I gave up a very good permanent job. And of course, all my friends and family were in Adelaide. But it was also a pretty exciting move to make. But Sydney was this much bigger, much busier, much scarier city really than Adelaide. It was also a lot more expensive to live in. Over those first couple of years in Sydney, I'd had 3 separate jobs, and all of them really interesting, really challenging, good jobs, but none of them permanent. They were all short term. And so at the end of 2000, I was looking around for my next position. But I really wanted to get back into the housing market. I'd been renting all that time in Sydney, and I wanted to kind of just build up again to the kind of lifestyle I've been able to afford in Adelaide. And I knew that to do that, I was going to have to move into that next earning bracket. I was going to have to move into a quite senior management position to earn the kind of income that would give me that lifestyle. But I was kind of looking at that. There was plenty of positions around at the time, but really I looked at it and it was, quite daunting because I knew what it was going to entail. I knew that it was going to involve a lot more hours, much longer working days, a lot more responsibility, a lot less time and flexibility on my part, managing bigger teams, managing bigger budgets. I worked with people who were in those positions. I knew what it was going to take. And frankly, I wasn't all that attracted to it. So anyway, I was in the second job that I had been in, I had contracted an external consultant to come in and do a really quite big statewide evaluation of a project that I was responsible for. And she came in and did a really good job, and we got on really well. And so we struck up a bit of a friendship and were kept in touch afterwards. And I was having coffee with Ruth one day, discussing my options of my next career move. And she said to me, well, have you ever thought about consulting? Well, up until that point, had not even crossed my mind. And my immediate response was to dismiss it. That wasn't something that, I was really going to be capable of. But over the next week, I could not get it out of my head. It just kept going round and round. Now, most of what was going on in my head was all the negative self-talk. All the reasons why I should not consider that option. You're not senior enough, you're not old enough, you don't have the credibility, who's actually going to give you a job as a consultant? And then there was all the worry and concern about it not being a secure job. How was I going to get a mortgage if I didn't have a permanent job? And of course, I had no idea how to be a consultant. So there was a lot of negative self-talk going on. But at the same time, I just had this glimmer of possibility that maybe I could do this. Just maybe I could get the kind of lifestyle and income I wanted without taking on a really senior job with all those potentially crippling hours. So, I met with Ruth again, and what she said at that next meeting really changed everything for me, because she had a proposition for me. She said that she'd been looking around for someone to mentor, someone she could bring in on some of her larger consultancy projects as a junior, someone she could teach the ropes to and work with over the years as my skills grew. And she thought that I could I could be that person. So it really did change everything for me, because she wasn't offering me a job. I still had to, set up my own consultancy business and leave employment. But she was offering me a couple of critical things. The first was a bit of a safety net. I was going to get my first project, on the back of her business. And the second thing was she was going to offer me training and development. Such a huge and generous thing to provide for me. So we struck a deal and I took the plunge. And, it was just the best decision I ever made, but I really remember the anxiety, and I remember that I very nearly didn't make the move. So nearly 19 years on, what has consulting meant for me? Well, so many things. The biggest advantage for me has been the flexibility. It was what attracted me to it back then, and it's still the thing I love most about consulting now. There is so much flexibility. I work for myself, I work from home, I can set my own hours, I work hard, but it's a much more flexible existence than being an employed senior person in an employed situation. 10 years ago, I did a bit of a sea change and moved up the coast from Sydney to a lovely place called Long Jetty, and it has been a seamless move in terms of my consultancy because of that flexibility. There's definitely been financial rewards. Definitely I have earned more money with the kind of flexibility I want than I ever would have had in an employment situation. And of course, the work is so interesting. I've done hundreds of consultancy projects over the years, all of them challenging, all of them interesting, and all of them important pieces of work in the public health sector. So it's been a very, very rewarding existence, really, as a career move. So now it's actually my turn to pass on what I know. These days I get the pleasure of helping other consultants, other people making that transition, build a successful business. Because I remember, even if there's no roadmap, how scary that move can be and how the anxiety can actually stop people from making the move. I talk to a lot of people who are thinking about making the move to consulting. And the two things that they most struggle with at that point are, firstly, defining their service offering. How am I going to package up my skills and experience into a consultancy package? That's the first thing they really struggle with. And the second thing they really struggle with at that point is, how am I going to market myself? How am I going to get my first one or two clients? So it's they're two very common hurdles that new consultants face. And if that's where you're at and you're struggling with those issues, then just head to the link below for some really critical information that's going to help you overcome those hurdles.